More than 950 people were charged for their alleged role that day, including 7 from here in Connecticut.
And rioters were protesting the results of the 2020 election. For more, let's check in with Channel 3's Dylan Fearon. He is live in the newsroom with those details. Dylan.
Well, guys, Senator Richard Blumenthal was inside the Capitol during the riots. He said he and other members of Congress had to evacuate the Senate floor with protection from Capitol Police who had their guns drawn. Today, Blumenthal doesn't want to forget what happened, but he also wants to move forward to make elections safer. That includes new voting machines in Connecticut and protections for poll workers.
We need to hold accountable anyone who caused it.
2 years after the violent attack on our nation's Capitol building, Senator Richard Blumenthal is reliving those frightening moments inside the Senate chamber.
We could hear the sounds of the attack, the sights of the insurrection through the windows, the mob carrying pipes and bats.
Blumenthal needed Capitol Police protection from rioters. He calls it a day full of tragedy and trauma for our country. But he's trying to look forward, trying to find ways to make our elections safer, more secure, and protect democracy. Congress passed the Electoral Count Act, which has set federal money aside to give states new voting equipment, something Connecticut desperately needs.
We have voting machines here that are decades old and need to be replaced. The federal government should provide the money to do it.
Hartford Mayor Luke Bronin agrees there's $75 million available to the states. Connecticut needs to apply for the grant money.
What happened was a coup attempt. It was an attempted insurrection.
Blumenthal also wants protection for our poll workers.
Anybody who intimidates or harasses a poll worker should be held responsible criminally.
The images of January 6, 2021 are burned into our minds.
Now, election workers in Hartford say they need new voting machines immediately. The current machines get new parts and maintenance every year. They still work and are safe, but officials are pushing for ones with new and better technology. I'm Dylan Fearon, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Dylan.